Hey, welcome back to Lick of the Week videos. I thought for the next few videos we would look at playing in different keys, understanding a little basic music theory, chord progressions, how to move song from one key to another, because I tend to notice a lot of threads on the Hangout relate to playing in the key of D, playing in the key of A, just in general understanding how to play in different keys, and it seems to be a source of confusion for a lot of players that are new to the instrument. One way banjo players try to accomplish playing in different keys is to use this gadget called a capo. And a capo is a wonderful little tool that allows you to do a lot of different things, play in different keys, change the tone of your banjo by capoing up. But one of the downsides to a capo that I've always found is that people don't tend to learn much about the fingerboard. They just rely on the capo to think for them, and they'll put the capo in different places, and it tends to confuse them about what the chord shapes are that they're using, how chords operate. And my rule of thumb, or my little saying is, don't let the capo think for you, because a capo is notoriously dumb because it's just a piece of metal. It has no brain power. You're the operator. So usually if you're putting a capo on and things go awry, it's operator error, because if you have the capo in the right place, it's doing its one sole function, which is just to be clamped to the fingerboard. So let's look at first of all the concept of a chord progression. Chord progression is basically some music theory lingo that just means the order for chords in a song. And these could be chords you're using for rhythm. It could be the chords that you might use in your solos. Whatever the case may be, it's the chords and how they're used, what order they come in, or how they cycle around, that is set for the song you're looking in. And I like to use an example song. I'm going to use 9 Pound Hammer, which is one of my favorite songs, just as an example. It's an easy tune to remember. Most people are familiar with it. And let's take 9 Pound Hammer and examine what the chords are in the song and figure out what the chord progression is. Now, one of the things that's really nice about using a little of this theory, oh, look out, theory, it's a theory. It's not bad, theory is a good thing. Let's use theory in an easy, applicable way. Let's use it immediately to help us understand what's going on in a chord progression. When I say what is the chord progression for a 9 Pound Hammer, what I mean, or what I'm asking is, what are the chords in 9 Pound Hammer and what order do they fall in the song? That allows me to use those chords in my solos, but more importantly, it allows me to play backup. I could play chord vamps, I could do licks, I could do all kinds of things using these chords. But I need to know what the chords are, and what order they fall in, and then how long do they last. Well, if you understand some chord progression logic, it will immediately explain what about 99.9% of these songs that we hear all the time in bluegrass all the time, what chords there will be in those songs, because instead of just guessing and looking around, we're using logic. So all songs fit into patterns, and once you determine those patterns, it's really easy to play at least backup. Maybe you can't play a great solo, but at least you can play backup. So let's take 9 Pound Hammer and approach it from the backup side of things, and let's identify the chord progression. I'm going to spit out some chord progression terminology, or some lingo that you may hear, also called the natural number system. The chord progression for 9 Pound Hammer, regardless of the key, we just happen to be using it in the key of G, but it would be 1, 4, 1, 5, back to 1. So basically the chord progression for 9 Pound Hammer is what we call a 1, 4, 5 type of chord progression. And that's the most common chord progression in the universe, especially for simple songs in bluegrass and old time. There are literally thousands of songs that have 3 chord changes, and most of those songs have the 3 changes being 1, 4, and 5. Now, what does the 1, 4, 5 mean, and how can I determine what that is? Well, you have to look at a scale. Again, some theory, but a G scale is just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, represented by these notes. And we won't worry about what the scale is or try to deduce why those scale notes are what they are. We're not worried about any of that, but we just want to use that scale to help us identify the chords that we see a lot in songs. So down at the bottom of the screen here, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. Those 7 notes, and once you hit G again, you've gone into another octave, another set of scale notes. Those 7 notes, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G, or I should say 7, to kick out the last G. Those 7 notes are not only scale notes. You don't just use those notes to play melodies. You can combine them to make chords. And again, there's some logic behind it. There's some theory stuff that explains how you identify what those chords are. But let's just accept it that this set of notes that I'm going to give you is a G scale. And each one of those notes will be represented by a Roman numeral or a number, whichever you prefer. The 1 chord will be the first note of the scale, G, G major. The second note in the G scale is A, will be A minor. It'll be represented by I, a lowercase Roman numeral. B, the third note in the scale, could also be represented by B minor. I, lowercase 3. IV is Roman numeral for 4, or the number 4 would be your C, which is the 4th note in this G scale. The D is the 5 chord, or the V. 6 is E minor, VI, lowercase. And this one's a little strange. We'll touch on this later. Instead of an F sharp chord, we're going to diminish this chord or drop it down a half step into an F. So the chord progression we have for G, or the chords that will most likely appear in the key of G, not always, this is not set in stone, but these are the ones that you'll see the most. These are the most logical chords to use in the key of G to play melodies and rhythm and all kinds of things. G, A minor, B minor, C, D, E minor, and F. Now again, there'll be some chords that appear in songs that you'll think to yourself, I don't see that chord represented by any of the scale notes. We won't worry about that in this video. We're just going to deal with songs that fit this standard pattern, which is using the scale notes to represent chord changes. Now let's go back to 9-pound hammer. And again, we've determined that 9-pound hammer is a 1. The first note of the scale is G, G major. And then we stay there for about a measure. And then we go to C, which is represented by the 4 chord for a measure, back to the 1 chord, which is G, for half a measure, 2 beats, and then the 5 chord appears, which is D, and then back to 1 for a measure. So if I was in a jam session, I would have 2 options. Somebody asked me, hey John, what are the chords in this song? Well, I could try to call out, well, we go to G, we go to C, and then we'll stay there a while, and then we go back to G major, and then we go to D, and then we go back to G. Well, I guess that's helpful. That's telling the other guy what it is we're doing, or he's trying to tell me, you know. But if I was in a jam session with people who knew a little bit of this chord progression terminology, or this language, lingo, what do you want to call it, I could just go 1, 4, back to 1, 5. So I could go, oh, this is 1, 4, 1, 5. And what I would be using is that shorthand or that terminology to explain to them, oh, 1, 4, 1, 5, G, C, G, D. So even if I move that song to another key, this is the important thing to remember, the chord progression of the song will never change. Only the names of the chords themselves will change, but the pattern for those chords will always stay the same. And that's something we'll talk about in some subsequent videos. But for this video, let's just try to wrap our heads around what a 1, 4, 5 chord progression means and how it relates to the scale. And we'll continue the discussion next video. I appreciate it.